So this session for me is about what can we learn from the Olympics. So as you know, the Olympic flag has 5 rings. The symbol of the Olympics is 5 rings. It's got a blue ring, a yellow ring, a black ring, a green ring, a red ring, and together with that white background, that makes up the symbol of Olympianism. So that's called the symbol of Olympianism. And I think that sounds a little bit like the symbol of optimism. So, let's look at those 5 rings as symbols of optimism. So just for a minute, consider then what would be in your 5 Olympic rings. What would your Olympic rings stand for? So think about each of those different rings and those 5 rings, and what would be the values that you would place important to you in those rings. And somebody once said to me, the definition of value is something that's important to you. So, it could be equality, it could be hard work, it could be truth, it could be clarity, kindness, acceptance, joy, responsibility, humility, determination, gratitude, loyalty. You can think of all different types of values, and it'd be great if you could share what your values are down below in the comments. But what's important to you? These values are nobody else's. These are your values. You can't get someone else's values. You can't live anybody else's values. But what are your values? What do you live by, and what's important to you? And more importantly, what happens when you don't live those values and you sort of go off track and you go off mission? My advice is to just stop and say, right, stand back. This doesn't feel right. Take a breath and consider the options and then make a positive step forward. That's what STOP stands for. Stand back, breath, options, and positive step forward. And I find that when sometimes I'm not living my values, and I think one of my values is about balance and about, living what I talk about and things when I come here and talk and how, in the group and in various places, when I'm not living my values, I know inside and I think to myself, right then, what do I need to do? Stop, take a breath, think about the positive outcomes and the options and move forward. So that's one little activity with the Olympics. What about another one? So if you draw those 5 circles again, or use the same 5 circles you've got, ask yourself the question, what do you want to achieve in the next month, in the next 5 months? Write them in those circles, and maybe like the Olympic, the fireworks that go off around the Olympic rings, do little offshoots of how you're actually going to achieve them and what you're going to do to achieve those 5 things. It's like your Olympic mind map, isn't it? That's what you could create. And then I think the other thing to consider about those Olympic rings is to consider your role models. So which 5 people, past or present, they can be anyone, but what were their values and what did they stand for, and why are they important to you, and what can you learn from them? What can you learn from her or his story? Fantastic learning opportunities here with these 5 rings. So the first one, think about what's important to you. Second one, 5 things you want to achieve. And the third one, who are your 5 role models? So I've been thinking about these questions, and I thought, right, what could be the learnings for this session? What could I learn from the Olympians, those people that are living that Olympian spirit? Well, the first learning I have is about getting a coach. All the Olympians and all the athletes, they have brilliant coaches behind them who are in the background. Now, we only sometimes get a glimpse of those people, mostly when somebody's winning or achieving, but they have been that person behind them. They have been behind them and encouraged them along the way. Now, a coach can be a physical coach. You can hire a coach, you can speak to a coach and have one-to-one or group coaching sessions, or it might be joining motivational groups or joining groups on the internet and enjoying and taking part in those activities. The more you put in, the more you get out. That's got to be the golden rule, isn't it? Putting it out there is better than taking it, and putting it out there and sharing. And don't forget to share in the comments what your thoughts and feelings are on what I'm talking about today. But Get that coach behind you. Now, it could be a book, it could be an audio book, it could be a online course. You know, get that coach behind you, someone you can have a chat with. The great thing about coaches is they have years of experience and they've soaked up all that information and gathered it all together, and they can help you work with that. Or you could work, you know, again from a book, grab yourself a wonderful, great book and learn from it. The most important thing from a coach, and whether physical, in person, or whatever, is that you do from it. There's no point in having loads of books on your shelf help, and not using the wisdom that's inside them. So number one, learning, get a coach. Number two, athletes know to focus on, and they also know when to block. So when you look at an Olympian getting ready to start their race or their competition, you can see them focusing. They use all different methods to focus. You know, they use anchors. They have physical anchors. So some of them you may see punching in the air or clapping their hands or bouncing up and down and getting their body ready and getting things going. That's their state. That's getting their state. Their mental and their emotional. They use language, you know, the yes, power, empower, win. You know, they use all this type of things to keep them focused and get them motivated. So consider what you do before you get going into your race and your activities. What do you use? You know, I use one single hand clap when I have achieved something, and I make it big and loud. So boom, like that. When I achieve, I go boom, and I celebrate it. And what that does, that anchors that massive clap and that sound and that feeling into my mind. It's when I'm achieving. And you see athletes focusing on that. They also know when to block. So they know when to block criticism in the social media or other influences. You know, people said this, they said that, you shoulda or you coulda or you woulda after that race. They seem to be able to block down that criticism and those voices, and they shut down and block off the world, switching off the messages, avoiding the distractions and focusing on that podium and on that medal. So what can you block when you're working or when you're trying to focus? Can you switch off the Facebook? Can you close down all the windows? Can you shut the door? Can you put a notice on the door that says, hey guys, I'm doing some important work, don't disturb me? Or can you go to a place, you know, if you're trying to work on something, can you go somewhere else rather than your normal office? Or if you just need time out, because that's focus as well. Have you ever done a walk where you just literally had a walk and just focused on what's around you? Some people call that walking meditation. And I've got a little walk near my house where I can just go and walk and just focus on the things around me and nature around me. So number three, learnings. Athletes have a vision. They see the outcome, they draw their outcome, they have vision boards, they write it down, they see in their mind's eye them winning that medal, getting on that podium. And because they have that, then they plan the workouts after that. They don't plan their workouts first, they have that vision. Now you might have seen there's some great pictures in the press where Tom Daley drew when he was a child, him diving off a diving board with the Olympic symbols behind him, you know, that the Olympic optimism behind him. And there's an exact picture of him taken of him diving off the diving board. That's exactly the same as that drawing that young lad Tom Daley drew, which is just amazing and shows the power of visualization. And when, you know, athletes visualize, they look at all the costs as well, what they've got to sacrifice. They also understand, you know, that what you need to get from A to B, and they make that adjustments with that vision in sight. So it never goes well, or, you know, just in a straight line. There's bumps along the way. You know, when a plane goes, we've all heard, from London to New York, it makes many adjustments on the way there. But there's still that vision is it's going to land at JFK at a certain time. What else do Olympians do then? Well, they also take responsibility for the outcome. And there's a brilliant saying from Seb Coe, who when he took over the Olympics in the UK, he basically said is that I will take responsibility for the outcome. And as the Olympic chair, I will both carry the can and carry the torch, which I think is an amazing attitude to have, an amazing attitude. He will take responsibility as well as celebrating. And now coming to the end, folks, here, they know that things take time. They know they not only need to train their mind, their body, their spirit, but they must train people around them as well to live their vision, to support them. But they understand rest and recuperation and having small sprints and long jogs are all part of the process. They trust the process. You know, if they're a weightlifter, they have heavy lifts, but in between they have small lifts. If they're a gymnast, they don't do all the exercises all in one go. They practice one at a time and in order to make that whole routine. That's what they do. They realize that things take time. And although the Olympics is based around the marathon, they do know that they have to take time. And on that note, the Olympics was founded by, were founded on the marathon. And if you look into history, the historical sort of accounts in old Greek mythology and etc. was about Philippides. And Philippides is the first person ever to run the marathon. And he ran the marathon, allegedly, from Marathon to Athens to tell people of the joy of winning a war. And he ran that marathon. Now, sadly, for Philippides, it didn't really go too well because the poor old chap, when he finally got to Athens to deliver the message, he died of the exhaustion that he'd run this marathon. However, the legend goes, when he died, he said this to give the news to people: "Joy to you, we've won." And allegedly, it's the first time the word joy was ever spoken. So on Philippides' dying breath, he still expressed joy to other people, which I think is fantastic. And that's the learnings I've got from the Olympics, or maybe from the Olympianism, the optimism. So what are your 5 values, your intentions and your role models? And how are they going to help you along the way? And are you going to consider getting a coach? Are you going to focus on what's important and what's not important? Have that vision. Turn adversity into strength. Take responsibility for what you're doing and run that marathon like Philippides, with joy in your heart, with joy in your mind, and finally joy on your lips that you can share with people.